Hello and welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here today and participating in the Huntington's Disease Society of America externally led patient-focused drug development meeting for pre-symptomatic, early and mid-stage adult-onset HD. That's a mouthful, y'all, and it's really important that we keep that in mind as we go through this meeting today. My name is Arik Johnson. I'm the Interim CEO and Chief Mission Officer at HDSA. It is my honor to welcome you all, and thank you again for being here today for this very important meeting. I want to extend a warm welcome to the members of the HD community who made it here today, and those of you that are online watching this. I also want to thank the members of the FDA staff, medical product developers, and HD clinicians and researchers who are with us. Today we have over 60 people living with HD and their families in the room, and over 140 who have registered to watch this online. You are representing 8 countries and 43 US states. Welcome, everyone. Cheers to you all. A couple of really important things for you to be aware of. The bathrooms, if you walk out these doors and turn left, there's a hallway that says restrooms on it right on your right-hand side. And then more important than that, we know that what is being talked about here today is very important, but it can sometimes be difficult to speak about it and to hear about it. So we are hosting what we're calling a wellness room that is through the bathroom corridor and to the right. And Jessica or Marianne will be available. If you need to go step out, if you want space to yourself or want to talk to someone, please take care of yourself over the course of this meeting today. This is who y'all are. This is where y'all from. I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, because without your support, we could not be doing this today. So thank you so much for making this meeting possible. Please give a round of applause to our corporate sponsors. So why are we here today? Because the time is now for this meeting and for this opportunity. Oh, geez. Why am I here today is probably what you're really asking yourselves. We're here today because the time is now, because research is happening more in earlier stages of Huntington's disease. Current trials seek to slow the progression of the disease. And as clinical trials shift to earlier stages, there are different treatment outcome preferences and benefit risk considerations that we need to be aware of and that regulatory agencies and medical product developers need to be aware of. Also, because of the nature of the trials, some HD patients may only be eligible for a single HD clinical trial. So people are very thoughtful about what they choose. And in some cases, that might hinder people from choosing to participate. That said, the HD community is ready and prepared to have this conversation today. The HD community is highly educated about HD and associated research. Most, I think all of you all, and many people who aren't in the room, have participated in a survey where 73.6% of survey respondents to the HDSA HD Symptoms and Treatment Impact Survey stated they actively seek out information to stay current on the latest developments in new therapies to treat HD. Nearly 3/4 of the respondents said this is something that I do regularly and actively. 64.2% are optimistic that a therapy to slow or stop the progression of the disease will be available in the next 10 years. 52% are optimistic that gene therapy will be available in the next 10 years. All of these factors create an urgency to understand the burden of living with pre-symptomatic, early, and mid-stage HD, and to support an innovative scientific approach to developing new therapies. So these are our goals for the meeting today. This is why you, the HD community, is here, again, in the room and online. This is your meeting. We have helped put it together. We've worked with the FDA to build the structure of the day, but this is for you. This is your meeting. This is why we are all here. The goal of the meeting is to enhance the learnings of FDA staff and medical product developers, to share the impact living with pre-symptomatic, early, and mid-stage HD what does that impact on your life? To ensure the community's treatment outcome preferences, expectations for benefit, and tolerance of risk informs regulatory decision-making and medical product development. Finally, we want to increase the understanding of the challenges associated with collection methodologies, the types of trials that are run and how they're run, and participation in clinical trials in these 3 stages of the disease. What is it like to think about participating or to participate? So how are we going to do this? By hearing from you. After these opening remarks, there's going to be 2 sessions of speaker panels with facilitated discussions. The discussions will be broken into 3 sections so we can hear perspectives on pre-symptomatic, early stage, and mid-stage HD. For those of you who are online, please provide your comments in the chat and we will get to as many as possible. For all attendees, both in the room and online, please know that even if we don't get to your comments today, you will have an opportunity to contribute them after the meeting, and they will all be included in the Voice of the Patient report. We're also going to have lunch and an afternoon break. That's all on the agendas that are in front of you, so please refer to those. And again, as a reminder, if you're starting to feel something, if you're saying, hey, this is getting hard for me, if this is feeling like a little much, don't hesitate to step out and take care of yourself. Don't hesitate to check into the wellness room. I want to end my little introduction just by saying, again, thank you all for being here. We truly appreciate it. You are all representing yourselves as people who are living with HD. And what you say today is your experience and your story. And hopefully that encourages other people to share theirs as well. For those that are online, for those in the room, again, please, if you feel like you don't get to say what you say or you think something afterwards that you're like, oh God, this is so important, please remember to complete that in the survey afterwards. And please encourage your family and friends who may not have signed up for this, because this is a big deal and it might be a little scary to say, hey, here's an opportunity for you to share too. The more we hear from you, the more we get to share with others. With that, thank you. And I would like to introduce Dr. Teresa Buracchio, Director of Office of Neuroscience, CDER, and FDA.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is a real honor to be here today. I'm Teresa Buracchio, and I'm the Director of the Office of Neuroscience in our Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at FDA. And our group oversees drugs that are in development for a variety of neurologic conditions and neurodegenerative diseases, including Huntington's disease. We also work closely with our colleagues in the Center for Biologic Evaluation and Research who handle the gene therapies and stem cell therapies, and also our Center for Devices and Radiological Health. And many of those reviewers and staff are online today. I'm not sure if anyone's in the room, but many of them are listening. We also have other representatives from CDER who are listening too. So you are being heard today, and I want you to know that. And we also, do take these Voice of the Patient reports. Really, they're very helpful to us, and we do reference back on them. So this is a great opportunity, and I'm so happy to see so many patients, caregivers, supportive partners here in the room today. It's really gratifying to see you all here, and I know many more are online as well. We're really excited to hear what you have to say and to learn about your lived experiences with Huntington's disease. And it's important to note that while FDA plays a critical role in medical product development, we are just one part of the process. And I'm also glad to see the high level of interest from industry as well as academia and other medical product developers and stakeholders who are here to advance the development of new therapies for Huntington's disease. We want to be very clear that we share the community's commitment to facilitate the development of safe and effective medical products for Huntington's disease. And also want to clarify that when we talk about medical product development, we mean the term broadly. and to encompass the identification, development, and evaluation of potential therapies or devices that can help patients manage their condition. So we're not just focused on drugs, we're looking at a variety of medical products that could be available to help patients with Huntington's disease. We're here today to learn from the experts on the lived experience with Huntington's disease, which is the community here present today, patients and their caregivers. About a decade ago, FDA started its patient-focused drug development program. And as part of this program, FDA began having patient-focused drug development meetings, which are also known as PFDD meetings. And these meetings brought patients, caregivers, and various members of the community together to listen and learn about patients' experience with their disease or disorder. Since that program began, FDA has conducted roughly 30 PFDD meetings, and we've attended many, many more that have been externally led, like the one today. And what we've learned from these meetings is that patients are experts in the lived experience of their disease, and patients are uniquely positioned to inform regulatory agencies and provide an understanding of the burden of disease and current available treatments. As I mentioned, the product of these meetings, the voice of the patient report, is very important to us, and we can and do reference those reports when we are working on drug development programs. We use these reports to assist us in the advice that we give to developers of new therapies and in our regulatory decision-making. FDA protects and promotes public health by evaluating the safety, effectiveness, and quality of new products. But we do not ourselves develop the medical products or conduct the clinical trials. We are in an advisory and a regulatory capacity. It is, however, our responsibility to ensure that the benefits of the products outweigh the risks. Therefore, the conversations that we have here and that will be had today are extremely valuable to us, for us to hear what patients and caregivers care about. Understanding how patients view the benefits and risks of therapies and devices for Huntington's disease will help us to facilitate the development of these products. We at FDA recognize the devastating nature of Huntington's disease and the high unmet need for new therapies. And many of us at the FDA also have lived experiences with neurodegenerative diseases widely, including Huntington's disease. And we understand how these diseases impact patients and their loved ones. And we understand the tolls that these diseases take, but we also still have room to learn, and we want to learn today. We have recently seen exciting advances in the development of new therapies for Alzheimer's disease and a genetic form of ALS, and we are eager to apply the insights gained from those experiences to advance science in the field of neurodegenerative diseases more broadly and specifically in Huntington's disease. We are committed to advancing new therapies in this space, and today's meeting plays an important part of that commitment. We learned so much from these meetings, and we look forward to incorporating what we learned today into the agency's thinking and understanding of how patients view benefits and risks of therapies and devices for Huntington's disease. Thank you very much for your participation today, and we are grateful to every one of you for being here and sharing your personal experience, stories, and perspectives. So thank you, and I'm now going to turn the floor back to the meeting staff.
Thank you again to Dr. Buracchio, the FDA staff, and especially to all of you all here in the room. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Victor Sung. Victor is a professor of neurology, Division of Movement Disorders, and director of the HDSA Center of Excellence at University of Alabama, Birmingham. Dr. Sung is going to speak about the natural history and progression of HD. Victor?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Arik said, I'm Victor Sung. I live this every day alongside many of you. I direct a center of excellence, so I take care of HD patients, and I also participate in a lot of these HD clinical trials. So this is, life's work kind of thing. I also am very aware that, especially for all of you in the room, this is a little bit, I'm not going to teach you anything new. You guys live this and are experts in this, just as Arik said. But particularly to frame our meeting, and give us our landscape of where we're going today, I think it's important to start with just a little bit of an introduction about Huntington's disease and the trajectory of it over a lifetime. So let's start with epidemiology. So the epidemiology of HD is that the prevalence, according to Rare Disease Advisor, is 8.87 per 100,000. But according to a 2017 Medicare study, the US prevalence was as high as 13.1 per 100,000. That still puts HD squarely in the realm of rare diseases, right? But I think from a frame of reference standpoint, the way I think about this is, as Dr. Buracchio just mentioned about diseases like Alzheimer's disease and ALS, HD relatively gets less press time, less notoriety, but the prevalence, which is how much of this disease is out there, of HD is actually really similar to ALS. ALS occurs, or the incidence is higher, but since the prognosis of ALS is shorter and the patients live less time and HD patients live longer, then the prevalence of ALS and HD is actually very similar. We don't have the ice bucket challenge to put ourselves in the news as well, but I think of prevalence as the likelihood that you will encounter a person with HD in your lifetime. And if that is the same in HD as it is with ALS, then that's what we're trying to champion for, right? At least the same level of recognition of ALS. All right, so then the background of HD, obviously you guys know, it's a pure genetic neurodegenerative disorder, meaning there is no way to get HD other than inheriting it through genetics. The genetics we first came to understand through the US-Venezuela Collaborative Research Project, which was established in 1979 by Dr. Nancy Wexler. If you don't know the story, I have the link there, but I would encourage you to Google the New York Times article where she talked about her journey in discovering HD. But she led this really land-breaking study where they went to Venezuela, right in this village in Venezuela. 50% of the population has Huntington's disease. And the thing to put it in the frame of reference is, remember, this was before the Human Genome Project, right? We didn't have the sequence of genes. We knew that there was something going on in this village if half the people had this disease called Huntington's disease. But we didn't really understand the genetics of it. So a team of physicians went down and examined over 4,000 people, collected over 4,000 blood samples, sent all those blood samples on dry ice to Mass General, and they were able to sequence the gene. It's one of the first human genes to be sequenced. It was the first trinucleotide repeat disorder to be discovered. So and a lot of people feel like the technology that was used to sequence the HD gene directly led to the Human Genome Project. So HD's significance in the landscape of medical history, hugely important, especially as regards human genetic disease. The gene itself encodes for a protein that confusingly is called Huntingtin with an I. I don't know why they chose that. I don't choose the names of these things, but the mutation itself is an expansion of the trinucleotide repeat, meaning everybody has a certain number of repeats, but in HD, that number of repeats is greater. 40 CAG repeats and higher is considered to be positive for HD. The gene itself lives on chromosome 4. A simple way to remember this, in case you want to spout these facts to your friends and family, is if you take a lowercase h for Huntington's disease and you flip it upside down, it looks like a 4. So it's on chromosome 4, and 40 repeats is your magic number to give you HD. So it is autosomal dominant inheritance with 100% penetrance, meaning there are no asymptomatic carriers. There are rare homozygotes. That would be if two people with Huntington's disease had a child, then there is a 25% chance that they got the Huntington's mutation from both parents if both parents had HD. So that is rare, but it's something that happens. The Average age of symptom onset is in the 30s to 50s. The graph on the right is from Jim Gasello, and his lab is the one that sequenced the HD gene. And you can see that you have CAG repeats across the bottom. So as your CAG repeat number goes up, then you have a younger age of symptom onset, and in general, a more rapidly progressive form of the disease. Speaking of more younger and rapidly progressive disease, you have juvenile onset HD, which many of you are living with in your families. That is defined as an age of onset of less than 20. It represents less than 10% of all patients with HD and does require a very high CAG repeat number, usually greater than 55 or 60, to have that. So the thing is, if you have the average age of symptom onset in your 30s to 50s, that is the prime wage earning years for most people. That is the prime time that people will be having children. So the two particular things that it leads to is, you feel normal, live completely normal life, and you think, oh, maybe I am free of this thing and I don't have HD. And then you have 5 children, and then at age 45, you start showing symptoms, and now you've passed it on to another generation, right? And the other thing too is if you start having symptoms in your 30s to 50s, and your work capacity is impacted, right? And then you have to retire early, and you have multiple family members in the same family affected in this way, HD, we know, has a strong downward socioeconomic pressure on the entire family. If multiple wage earners are losing their primary wage earning years, you guys know this. And the other thing too is that you could be a caregiver for someone in your family with HD, and at risk of developing HD yourself. And what if you start to become ill yourself with the disease and you can't be as an effective caregiver, right? So this is another big contrast with HD and diseases like ALS, where most of the time in ALS, except for the familial versions like Dr. Buracchio mentioned, for the most part, diseases like ALS are what we call lightning strikes, right? You have one person in the family with the disease, and while a devastating disease, the entire family can rally around them to help them to deal with their ALS. But in HD, when you have multiple family members, the whole family, as you guys know, and inspire us every day with the way you guys rally around the disease. But you're not rallying around one person, you're rallying around maybe 5, 6, 10. Many of you have multiple family members, many family members across generations with HD. Once the HD starts, the natural clinical course varies from person to person, but on average is about 15 to 30 years from symptom onset to death in adult HD. And the cause of death is not the disease itself, but complications like pneumonia and things like that. But this is kind of your trajectory. You start in the pre-manifest phase, and then you start developing symptoms. That would be the manifest phase, and then ultimately symptom progression and death from the disease. For staging of the disease, our traditional staging model really is based on your functional ability at each stage. All of you guys who have been taken care of in HD clinics, we all do this thing called the total functional capacity score. And I'm showing this not to make you all experts in how to do the scale, but I think it's important that the stages are in order, right? So occupation, then finances, then domestic chores, then activities of daily living, and then care level. We generally feel like the progression of the disease, you lose the ability to do those things in roughly that order. And as you lose the ability to do that thing in that stage or in that little section, then you move to the next stage, right? So the loss of that will define you moving to the next stage. So our classical 5 stages of HD of the Schultz and Fawn staging system are easier to group into 3 stages of early, middle, and late. So you have pre-symptomatic, which is before the symptoms start. Then you have the early stage, which is the Schultz and Fawn stages 1 and 2, which is roughly difficulties at work, eventually stopping work, needing help with financial affairs, but still functioning okay at home. And then the middle stage, no longer manage household responsibilities, may need help with kind of the basic daily activities like bathing, dressing, feeding, toileting, those kinds of things. And then late stage is really defined by the stage at which professional nursing care would be needed. Basically, the needs that the patient has exceeds what you can provide as the family alone. This graphic is from Dr. Chris Ross at Johns Hopkins, his paper, which is important to show as we think about the progression of HD, that our staging starts, manifest HD starts with this middle line, this diagnosis line right in the middle. But what this is really intended to show is a lot of our biomarkers, or a lot of things, are starting actually before the diagnosis is made, right? I mean, if you've lived this, you know there were symptoms that were starting before you were actually diagnosed by a doctor, right? So on the left panel, the natural history, you see some of these symptoms, the purple, dark blue, and orange line, those are starting up a little bit before you actually come to diagnosis. And then interestingly, the green panel on the right, a lot of our things that we use as biomarkers of HD are actually starting to show changes before the diagnosis is made. And this is really critical as we think about clinical trials, because that means things are changing maybe that we can measure even before the diagnosis is made, right? If we're talking about moving towards an era of disease-modifying therapies in HD where we currently have none, then we need to do it start it as early as we can, right? And so these biomarkers show us that we can measure that before, in a measurable way, technically before the diagnosis is made. You have the HD classical symptom triad, which is motor, cognitive, and behavioral symptoms. The motor symptoms, the most common thing is chorea, which is seen in greater than 90% of all HD patients. And my emphasis here is that though it's an involuntary movement, it has impacts on voluntary movements as well, as you guys know, right? If you have involuntary movements in your mouth and face, that's going to affect speech and swallowing. If you have involuntary movements of your hands, that's going to affect fine motor tasks. If you have involuntary movements of your legs, that's going to impact walking. So all hugely important things. And other motor features of the disease are listed here, and they are many. The cognitive symptoms, it will progress to dementia over time, but it's a different pattern of memory problems than we see in things like Alzheimer's disease. A lot of executive dysfunction, so difficulty with multitasking, multi-step tasks, difficulties with judgment, problem solving, and slower processing, more so than just forgetting words. Behavioral symptoms, we know that these can start many years before the onset of the motor part of the disease. The most common ones are depression, perseveration, irritability, impulsivity, and there are other important things listed here. The important thing I wanted to note here is that suicide, unfortunately, is a common cause of death in HD, much higher than rates that we see in other neurologic diseases like ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. But the behavioral aspect's really important in HD. And then as we finish up, this is just a slide to show the scientific approaches as we approach disease-modifying therapy, right? So currently, we have some symptomatic treatments for HD. We need better ones of those. We have no FDA-approved disease-modifying therapies, but we want to push into that realm, right? So you have the DNA, which is the green bar on the left. You have RNA things, which are in red, and you have the protein, which is in blue on the far right. And these arrows show all the places where we can intervene with therapies for disease-modifying therapies. And we have companies doing work in these areas at every place where I have an arrow. So I think the message is the future is bright. There are lots of things happening in disease-modifying therapy in HD. But we can only do it all together. Our traditional model, a lot of these therapies for disease-modifying therapy are trying to look at ways to lower the production of mutant huntingtin protein, which is an approach that we call huntingtin lowering. And there are many new novel ways to do this as well that are trying to lead to disease modification in HD. But with that, we'll finish up, and Phyllis just gave me the cutoff time that I'm over my time. Thank you guys all for being here and sharing your wisdom. We can only do this together, and we will do this together. Thank you so much.
Phyllis runs a tight ship, y'all, so we gotta stay on task. Victor, thank you so much. It's now time to move into the main program for today. I'd like to invite our panelists and Beth Manning to the stage. Our first topic is going to be health effects and daily impacts. So if you are part of that first panel, please come and join us. And I'd like to introduce Beth Manning as facilitator for the meeting. Beth.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Great to be here with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. It's a really important conversation, but I can also give you the heads up that the conversation to come is really impressive and one that I know you'll want to jump into. So we're going to have a great day. It'll be long, but we're going to have a great day. I want to let you know that I am not just here as a facilitator. I am not in the Huntington's disease community, but my mother had a rare degenerative brain disease that presents very similarly to Huntington's. And so I just want you to know that I'm coming with a strong sense of empathy, respect, admiration, and I know your courage that you're taking to do this. So I want to partner with you in bringing that forward today. With that said, we have a lot of conversations to get to. There's some really important questions to ask. There's some great stories to share. So please keep in mind, if I have to cut you off or if I have to flag that we need to move on in terms of timing, please keep in mind that it's not out of any disrespect. I have full respect for the stories that you're trying to tell, and we're just trying to get to those key takeaways that are going to make the biggest difference. Okay. With that being said, as it's your meeting and your audience being the research community, FDA, and other stakeholders, we will have those two key topics. Then we will have a panel for each of those topics. Then we'll have those discussions for each stage, each community that represents the various stages of Huntington's disease. I will walk you through all of that. You don't need to worry, but you do have the agendas for reference at your desk. You have the questions on the slides. So hopefully we can all stay on the same page. The conversations that we have will be prompted by those questions, but we want it to flow organically. So if you have something to say that has built off of what someone else says, but not specific to the question, or if you disagree with something somebody else said, even if it's not directly to the question, feel free to share that to the extent that you feel it's really important. We want to have the conversations that you need to have. Thank you. With the 3 conversations, if you are with pre-symptomatic HD, for the conversations that are oriented to pre-symptomatic HD, that's when we want you to speak up. If you have a later stage of HD, you can join that conversation, but reflect on when you were pre-symptomatic, or wait until the appropriate stage that you're at. Does that make sense? Okay, so we can keep that progression very visible through the conversation. How do you join? We have various people around the room that have microphones. All you need to do in the room is raise your hand, and they will come to you and they'll hand you the mic when it's your turn to speak. We are asking people to focus on 30 to 60 seconds for your time so that we can get as many people as possible and we get direct to those takeaways. We'll help you with that. People online, we have your conversations being monitored. Go ahead and put what you need, your questions, your comments. We'll have some of those read out loud. The ones that don't get read out loud will, like Arik said, be captured for the voice of the patient's report. Yes, we're good. Awesome. You have a QR code at your desk. I shouldn't say desk anymore. I should say table. We're adults. We are in grown people world. You have a QR code at your table where the platform for those comments is already open. So feel free to go ahead and add things if you don't get to say something during a discussion, or later after the meeting, if you think of something and you want to add it, you can do so there. Okay? A lot of how-tos. Now we're going to get into the part that you're actually here for. We have a fabulous panel for you today. You will relate to some of their stories. You may not relate to all of their stories, and that is okay, because these are individual stories. Thank you, Victor, for laying the foundation of the clinical perspective. Now it's time for us to layer on the lived perspective, right, from all of you and the panelists. So with that, we have the pre-symptomatic HD community represented by the wonderful Brittany, who's going to tell her story, and then we'll progress from there. So if you are in a place where you can't see, feel free to move. We want you to have the most out of this experience. Thank you, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany McGraw, and I am sorry. I feel very supported. I am pre-symptomatic with a CAG of 43. I tested in 2009. Can you hear me? I'm pre-symptomatic with a CAG of 43. I tested positive in 2019, shortly after getting married, to have this information as we plan for the future. This has influenced a decision not to have biological children. I also have anxiety, which latches on right now. Also, it latches on to the uncertainty and knowledge that someday I'm going to develop symptoms. When will I develop these symptoms? What symptoms will be most prominent for me? How long will I work? How will my mind be impacted? My mood? My relationships? When I drop or forget things, I find myself questioning, is this the onset of symptoms or just a normal case of butterfingers or forgetfulness? Things most people my age consider far-off concerns, like life insurance and retirement, become a heavy consideration early on. My very resilient mother with HD lives with my husband and I. We have good days where she can speak more clearly, has more energy, and has a positive headspace. We also have harder days, which require more repetition, assistance with ADLs, and our mood is low. On those harder days, I often find myself worrying about what my own future is like with HD. In the past 6 weeks, my mom has had 3 falls and multiple ER visits. And amid getting her the help she needs, I often find myself questioning what's in store for me and how my husband's going to have to support me in the future. My mom was my uncle's caregiver, so I had an idea of what to expect. I remember my uncle's ability to find joy even when he couldn't speak or walk, in playing Yahtzee and listening to oldies. As a pre-symptomatic caregiver, these perspectives are of the utmost importance. My mom loves a good game day with old country music in the background, and I cherish these too. What will be my favorite pastimes when my options are limited? I try to eat healthy and exercise, my favorite of which is dancing, and I teach dance too. I've always found this very fitting, given chorea, the hallmark symptom of HD, is rooted in the word for dance, in Greek. I worry about the day I won't be able to continue doing things I enjoy, such as dancing, reading, working, traveling, communicating. I am a therapist after all. HD brings up loss and grief. I've seen how HD transforms lives, whether the loss of independence, communication, control of emotions, work, play, travel, or impact on relationships. In many ways, I'm preemptively grieving. My hope is also shifted. One time at a support group with my local Center of Excellence pre-pandemic, the neurologist said, "Brittany, I think your generation will be the first to have a treatment." I was so hopeful, specifically about HD Generation 1. Then, in 2021, in the midst of a depressing worldwide pandemic, I watched a video reporting the halting of this study, which held so much hope for me and so many others. I remember going to my husband's home office in tears. I know there are several amazing trials now, but after that intense level of disappointment, I've been reluctant to hold on to that level of hope again. As a therapist and therapy client, I try hard to connect to hope. I also acknowledge how much harder it's gotten, especially the older and presumably closer to symptomatic I become. I am only cautiously optimistic that there will be a treatment to delay or cure during my lifetime, though I do feel confident it will happen someday. I'd like to end by saying I have love and gratitude for my life, my family, my friends, my HD family, and all of those working to find a cure. I'm hopeful that I will never become symptomatic, and if I do, that those symptoms are delayed or lessened. HD has impacted my life in ways few things can. There's a level of camaraderie and support that comes with the community, which is one of the reasons I'm so honored and humbled to be here today. I want to do all I can to help advance research, and I will participate in every study that I can. I am hopeful this impact session makes a difference not just in my life, but in the lives of all impacted. My incredible selfless husband and I end every day by our good thing. One good thing that was positive for that day, just to help reframe our perspective of the day. Today, my good thing is sharing my story with you in hopes that it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. We're going to now hear from Denise with another wonderful statement for us. Denise, go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Denise, and I live in New Jersey. I am representing as a person in the early stages of Huntington's disease. I would like to share with you the impact my symptoms have had on me. I inherited the mutated gene from my father, who passed away in 2009. That same year, I tested positive for HD. My CAG is 42. The symptoms I have had all along are panic disorder, depression, and anxiety. Thankfully, there are medications for these symptoms, so I feel like those symptoms are managed very well. I see a psychiatrist and neurologist regularly at an HD Center of Excellence. New symptoms have arisen since 2012, in spite of my efforts to live as full and normal a life as I can. I had a great job. I was a photo producer at a commercial photo studio. I have a very strong work ethic and was full of confidence. I would travel around the tri-state area speaking at HD Education Days. I went to Washington, D.C. to advocate on Capitol Hill. I always spoke off the top of my head, never using notes or PowerPoints. Fast forward to today, I felt awkward and nervous to speak in public. I must have a script and read it word for word. I struggled to put words together on paper. I started having trouble at work in 2012. Tasks that would come naturally for me began to take hours to complete. I had trouble with executive functions, specifically memory, multitasking, time management, and organization. By 2014, I had to leave my job. My job was my identity, so as you can imagine, this sent me into a depression. I was lost without my job. Currently, I struggle to read a paragraph in a book where I used to love reading books. My balance has been affected. Mostly every time I get up from the sofa, I fall back into the cushions. For as long as I can remember, I have been exercising, either working out at a gym, taking fitness, dance, or yoga classes. About 3 years ago, I started having a hard time balancing. I go to physical therapy twice a week to help with this, but despite all of that, I had 2 falls in the past month. The first fall, I hit my head and had 6 stitches. The second fall happened when I was walking my dog. I bent over to pick something up, and he pulled me, causing me to fall on my shins, resulting in some more stitches. Something that I used to enjoy, just a simple walk with my dog, has become the most stressful part of my day. For sure, the most terrifying symptom I have had in the last 4 months is the effect on my driving and maybe my independence. I've had 2 accidents since May. The thought of losing my license is so far the worst part of Huntington's disease. I'm sure that I have kept myself so healthy for so long by my lifestyle of working out several times a week and walking, keeping active, going to physical therapy. None of this would be possible if I can't drive. I couldn't imagine being stuck in the house 24/7. When I look to the future, I am not afraid of the disease or death. I feel badly for my husband and family. I know there will come a time when I am completely dependent on them, and that makes me sad for them. Thank you.
Denise. Really appreciate that. Linda, you ready? Ready. We have Linda here to represent our mid-stage Huntington's disease community. I should move that slightly for you. There you go. When you're ready.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Linda, and I am gene positive for Huntington's disease, HD, and currently in mid-stage. I was diagnosed 11 years ago and at age 50, and unlike many of my HD friends, there was no history of HD in my family. After further family testing, HD came from my dad. I have 3 siblings, with 2 of them also gene positive. When I was tested for HD, it was because of symptoms I was having, such as involuntary movements. When I would sit to watch TV, my feet were moving, my hands were moving, and my body moving. I was having a hard time making decisions. I would go to the grocery store, shop for hours, and have only a few things in the grocery cart, as there was too many choices. Having a hard time concentrating, I could no longer work as I could not multitask, and I was on the brink of being fired. Increased clumsiness with walking. I have always been active in sports, softball, volleyball, golf, hiking, and bike riding, but I could no longer do any of these activities. I can no longer grip a golf club, ride a bike, or do any more hiking. Since my diagnosis, I have been living my life to the fullest and have done quite a bit of travel. And I continue to travel, but it's becoming more of a challenge now, as my gait has changed from being unnoticed to stumbling more, falling more, and not being confident in walking any length of distance by myself. I now need more assistance in walking with help from others, and I am practicing using a walker, but this is not always an easy task because my involuntary movements. Stairs also a challenge, as I can't see them individually at this time. They run together for me. I have had a long history of depression and moodiness, which has changed over the years, but the doctors have done a great job of helping me stay on even keel. I feel my HD is being well managed. I see therapists, my neurologist, my primary care doctor, a social worker that knows HD, and I attend a support group. All of this care helps me feel connected and well cared for. A bad day for me is just wanting to stay home, not wanting to socialize with anyone, because I am self-conscious of my facial gestures, my appearance of being drunk when I walk, and my involuntary movements. My speech is getting harder for people to understand because I slur my words more and want to continue to be able to communicate with others. A good day for me is continuing to travel with no falls. I continue to be stable with my mood. I can still eat meals without choking or biting my lips or tongue. I look forward to visiting with friends and family, and I can continue to have fun playing games with my family. I was asked to put together a 5-minute statement about the impacts of HD on my life. And this was a monumental task for me as I easily lose my train of thought and have a hard time putting into words my life with HD. I appreciate your time in listening to my HD life experience.
Always love Linda's story, but also she has a spunky personality, so you'll see that come out probably some too. She's still got those facial expressions. We love them. At this time, I'm going to ask our panelists to return to your seat. Thank you very much. We do have one more, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today in person, but he sent a video for us. So while they return to their seats, we're going to have Jeff.
My name is Jeff Nelson. I am a retired naval officer and my wife Yvonne has Huntington's disease. I first met my wife in 1984. She was a vivacious, intelligent, and kind young woman who had attended the University of Texas with my squadron mate and best friend. I first learned of Huntington's disease on the day I proposed to her. She explained to me that Huntington's disease existed in her family and her father had it, and she was genetically at a 50% risk of acquiring the disease. I had never heard of the disease before and asked her to explain what it was. The symptoms and eventual outcome were daunting. She then said that she would understand if I wanted to reconsider. I didn't hesitate. I loved her, and that was all that mattered. Yvonne, at the time of our marriage, did not want to get tested because she wanted to live her life without the psychological burden of knowing she would eventually succumb to the effects of the disease. However, due to the risk of potentially passing on the disease to any children, we made the painful decision not to have any of our own. Initially, our marriage was very normal with work, travel, and recreational outings. But by 2000, I began to notice that Yvonne was having some difficulty in organizing herself for her job as a teacher. She had developed ever-increasing anxiety, which caused her blood pressure to spike into territory that on several occasions required emergency room visits to bring it under control. We explained the situation to her general practitioner, and he fortunately knew about Huntington's and prescribed low-dose Zoloft to go along with her blood pressure medication. This solved the anxiety problem in the short term. By 2010, Yvonne's memory and organizational decline began to negatively affect her job, and we decided she should retire to reduce her stress. In 2015, I retired. Yvonne, by this time, had also developed some personality changes. She was very easily agitated and displayed a mild bipolar ideation. This was a difficult time for me because the anger would appear without causation on most occasions. Yvonne would also require more and more input from me on household chores, computer applications, and household appliance use. I found more and more of my time was spent assisting her with technology, ADLs, travel plans, etc. Yvonne consented to a blood test and was diagnosed with Huntington's disease in August of 2015. At that point, we immediately entered into the Cleveland Clinic's Huntington's Disease Management Program. Yvonne's disease is now as well managed as possible, given the current level of medical knowledge and available therapies. I currently spend about 30% of my day assisting her whenever she needs help. This requires me to drop whatever I am doing at the time and immediately help her with whatever task or problem she is having difficulty with, after which I can usually return to what I was doing, at least for the short term. As her disease progresses, she will require ever-increasing levels of assistance from me until we reach a point where I can no longer provide all the care that she requires. It'll be a difficult day for both of us when we reach that point, because I want to ensure that she has only the highest quality of care and a loving, calm home life. Yvonne does not do well in strange environments and is easily confused when she is out of her comfort zone. She remains calm if I am within earshot, but her anxiety rises the longer I am not immediately available. My intention is to keep her at home for as long as possible. We are fortunate because we have the financial resources, medical knowledge, and the administrative skill sets necessary to ensure that this is possible. But eventually, We are both aware that she will reach a point where I will not be able to ensure that she has adequate care at home, and she will have to be placed in a facility that offers complete 24/7 care. I dread that day because she is the light of my life, and I know that she will be near the end of our time together. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to provide this statement.
Thank you to Jeff, for sure. One of the magical things about this community and how HDSA and how this community of people rallies is the prominent relationship with the family members in your active advocacy, in your research. You hear Jeff representing the family member perspective. You'll see the family member perspective on the second panel, equal priority. And you saw and you heard about from Linda the value of that family member, even without hearing from Deb, for instance. Linda's partner of 35 years. It's amazing, right? You heard and you saw the support even without hearing from Deb. So definitely a prominent part of this conversation. We're excited to have so many family members here, and make sure you're speaking from your perspective as well if you have things to contribute. This is the time to open that conversation up. We are going to focus on our topic number 1, which is the health effects of living with HD on your life. Remember, topic number 2 was about treatment. That will be this afternoon. So this morning's discussions, you're really wanting to focus on the lived experience with HD. And we're going to start right now with our conversation with the pre-symptomatic experience with HD and inviting family members in that space as well to contribute. Okay? Awesome. Just a reminder, if you're in the room, we have friendly faces around the room with mics. All you have to do is raise your hand. They'll come to you and hand it to you when it's your turn to speak. If you're online, we also have a friendly face that unfortunately you can't see, but she's keeping up with your conversation and she'll let us know when you have important questions. So let's jump in. Our first question is, of all the symptoms that you experience living with pre-symptomatic HD, which 1 to 3 have the most significant impact on your life? Remember, we're not necessarily talking about clinical, we're talking about your lived experience. So these can be things like anxiety, difficulty concentrating, but they can be other things that you wouldn't necessarily think of if someone was just talking about your clinical disease. So I'm going to open that up. While we do, and you're gathering your thoughts, you do not need to say your name. The video is stopped during this portion. We know that anonymity is a really important right that you have, and we're respecting that fully. The panelists had requested for their names to be shared, so that's why you saw their names, but you do not need to share your name if you don't want to. In the online community, we will not be reading your names. Okay, thank you. See, we have one over here.
Morning.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, making sure everyone can hear me.
Oh.
So I would say the first thing I think of is fixation. I get started on something and I cannot move on to anything else until I've finished it. Can you hear me?
We're not hearing you, so I just want to make sure it's on. It's okay. You're my kind of people.
Hello?
Yes, there you go.
Oh, hey. Okay. Good morning. Repeat. This is a disruption in what I was originally doing. No, fixation is the first thing that pops up. If I get fixated on a task and I am not able to immediately resolve it, it completely disrupts the rest of my day week, whether it's a planned fun activity with my family or, having to pay a bill. I cannot move on. The other thing is really kind of like, oh gosh, I wrote it down. This is why I wrote it down. Oh, disruption of routine. Look, see? That was my number 2. The other one is Dory brain. I don't know if you guys have ever called it that, but have you heard of that? Okay, yes. So if for those of you who don't know, Finding Nemo, Dory, just keep swimming. She knows the answer to the question, keeps on going, and then eventually an hour, day, a week later, she remembers what she was going to talk about. So that happens to me a lot, and those are like the three most kind of frustrating things that are disrupting to a day for me. So
Yes, there's a couple online. So some common ones, anxiety, emotional outbursts, and worrying about whether what I'm experiencing now, like mind fog, difficulty concentrating, is due to HD or not. A lot of anxiety about the future and excessive worrying.
So my name is Lauren. I actually was at the PFDD in 2015. So I'm very happy to be back here today. But this specific question was actually asked then too. And I just wanted to point out that participants were asked then to identify the top 3 HD symptoms that have the most significant impact on their daily lives. Back then, 2/3 of participants identified cognitive impairment, and nearly half listed depression and anxiety. So nearly everyone who provided comments during the session said that the cognitive and psychiatric symptoms of HD are the most difficult to live with and manage. Other top symptoms included slurred speech, sleep issues, neuropathy, and GI issues. These symptoms are significant to the daily lives of people living with HD, but not really adequately caught. Back then, I was pre-symptomatic, and today I am not. I am in the prodromal stage and dealing with cognitive symptoms. And I would say my top 3 specifically are executive dysfunction and everything related to executive dysfunction, which cost me my job. Social anxiety that has become severe, along with my depression, and this sensory overload that I've never experienced before, and kind of hitting a wall where my brain won't process anymore. And I can't do anything beyond that.
Right. Thank you for sharing, especially with social anxiety. This is taking a lot of courage. Thank you. Can you clarify, those are things, we're in the pre-symptomatic conversation right now, or are those the things that were top in pre-symptomatic for you? Yes. Okay.
But as well as moving
And
into
moving
that
into,
prodromal
okay.
space.
Okay. Okay. We are going to shift. Sorry, go ahead. We have one? Yeah.
We often say that those that are pre-symptomatic, that knowing that you might get it informs pretty much every decision, which is true. When I was 10, my father was diagnosed. We didn't know his mother had it. My whole family has it. Long story. But when I was 10, my mom told me that the only way to avoid it was to not have children. And so from the age of 10 on, even though all of my childhood, we grew up in a blue collar, Gary, Indiana family, and everybody, that's all we did was have children. And I have plenty of nieces and nephews to show it. But that led me, not just my mom saying that, obviously, but having the disease led me to avoid relationships, to avoid anybody who might want to have children. It made me think originally to have children just like really young, but mostly it drove me to work really hard. And so I went to school, only one in my family, and graduated and took a cool consulting job. But my goal was to work until I was 30 and then have symptoms, travel, and die.
Yeah.
That was literally my game plan at 33, to travel for a few years and then die.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. We are going to show you periodically throughout this conversation. There's a broader survey that a lot of you probably participated in. Hopefully most of you participated in. These were the results to a related question. Please select the 4 symptoms, and you're seeing here, there were a lot in pre-symptomatic that say they're not experiencing symptoms, but you can see that similar to a lot of things mentioned in the room, anxiety, difficulty concentrating, Dory brain, and depression were also among the top there. So we are going to move to our second question. Some of you have already started talking about this, so it's a nice flow. Are there specific activities that are important to you, but that you cannot do at all or as fully as you would like because of your condition? Some of the examples you've already mentioned: family relationships, work, that kind of thing, intimacy with partners. What are your thoughts there? Pre-symptomatic. Yes, ma'am.
As a potential caregiver, I know that my individual in the family, his passion would be music. And the thought of him not being able to do that breaks my heart. So.
You're good. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm pre-symptomatic. I think the function that's been most challenging for me is I can relate to the last question of depression, anxiety, difficulty concentrating. Becoming a parent, which I did PGD IVF to have a miracle child, has been very difficult multitasking and functioning in that way. I've also experienced difficulty in executive function. I've worked very hard to get to a very hard level, and I've started experiencing difficulty there as well. So I've done life things to change that, but I think that's where, of course, the worry sets in and everything, but I've experienced real problems in that pre-symptomatic stage.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. We have one lady in the back, if we can. Thank you.
Hi. My mom got asked to leave her job before we knew HD was in the family. She was a teacher. And I unfortunately had a child well, not unfortunately I had a child, but before we knew that HD was in the family.
Yeah.
So he has a 50-50 chance. And then I have a daughter through the IVF who doesn't. I was a teacher as well, and I'm a stay-at-home mom now. And the idea of going back to work terrifies me.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine going back. So that's what I'm affected
Yeah.
by.
It's very relatable. All parents. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I'm from an HD family, 6 kids, the Brady Bunch. 3 at least are gene positive. And I just want to tell a short story about my sister Barb. She never got a B in her life except for maybe PE. She ultimately graduated from the Wharton School, got a job on Wall Street, on the quick rise to great things. And in pre-symptomatic fashion, one day she got fired. And I share that because her whole identity up to that point was academia, the world of finance. And from that point on, it was probably 5 to 7 years before the layman would be able to look at her and know, that she had HD. And she would dutifully, sit in her office and reel off all these resumes, and we knew she was applying for jobs that she was never going to get. So I think the pre-symptomatic era is a little bit longer than people think, and I know most of you know that, but people on the outside don't. Thank you.
That's really important insight. Thank you. I'm curious here. We've got a couple comments now that are starting to blend around identity. In the pre-symptomatic phase, raise your hand if that kind of identity crisis, that kind of my identity has shifted dramatically, and that being a major point of difficulty. Raise your hand if that's relating. Okay. Seems like definitely an aspect of that conversation. Yes, sir, in the red.
Thank you. Following up on what the gentleman said, I'm in the early stages, but hearing the people say about pre-symptomatic, I think is a bad term. When you know you have HD, whether you have symptoms or not, that everybody else sees, you're not pre-symptomatic. The one lady up there said she's worried about her future. When I found out that I was positive, I was worried about my future, worried about my children, so forth. So that's something I think we're here to talk about the, FDA. That's something I think those that are studying it need to look at that in a different light and acknowledge that everyone that has tested positive has symptoms. The fact that you know what your future's likely going to be is a symptom, and it's very difficult to deal with. It's difficult to talk to people about it, especially your family. So, I think that needs to
Yeah,
get changed.
great point. Thank you for being clear on that. Obviously, support for that comment for sure. The survey reflected some similar points of view. So, 4 activities that have been most impacted: strain on family, intimate relationships, delay, or choosing not to start a family. We've got a lot of conversations about the choices to or not. And my life has not been impacted, 25%. So to your point, not a huge majority is saying it's not impacted yet. So thank you for bringing that point forward. The next question is, how has your condition and its symptoms changed over time? So we've got still in the pre-symptomatic phase. Obviously, that's a long period, as we've had it highlighted for us. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, my apologies. She's letting me know I skipped a question. That's my bad. Apologies. We're going to ask you, what's your good day look like? That's an easier one, maybe, or maybe a harder one. Hopefully not. What does a good day look like in the pre-symptomatic? Yes, ma'am. He's coming.
I think this, for pre-symptomatic, this is a really difficult question, right? Because there's not clarification right now as of pre-symptomatic, prodromal, and going into that very early HD. These are new discussions that we are having. So when we're talking about pre-symptomatic and you're talking about what a good day looks like, you're not really focusing on the HD side, right? Because you're pre-symptomatic.
Right.
But as things start to change and you start to notice those cognitive changes and stuff, now we call it prodromal or early HD. And so it's very hard to answer questions to pre-symptomatic for this.
Yes. And so that everybody knows, we do acknowledge that we're asking the same questions in each phase for our research community to hopefully see that progression. So just so you know, that is not an abnormal reaction if that's what you're feeling. Yes, ma'am. And you can go ahead and think about, what does a bad day look like? Okay, so the opposite question. Yes, ma'am.
So I keep a 5-year journal. I'm on year 3. So little blurbs every night. So I know what a good day looks like and a bad day looks like. And I like to reflect on where I was a year ago or 2 years ago, especially in this journey. So a good day for me is actually remembering driving home, like remembering how I got there, knowing I had a decent day at work, didn't mess up. If I did mess up, I owned my mess up, and that's okay. Going to sleep and having like a positive outlook on how my day was. I always try to, even if I write down that I had a bad day, I always try to end it with something positive. So that way I go to sleep and waking up in the morning knowing that I ended on that. So that's a good day for me.
Great, thank you. Has anyone else tried that technique of journaling so that you can actually already start to see how the experiences change? Yes, in the pre-symptomatic space. Are we starting there? Anyone already doing that? Yeah, good to know. Yes, sir. We have one in the corner if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, so as a potential, caregiver in the future, I don't want to sound like nihilistic, but a good day is just like ignorance, like just not thinking about it, like
Yeah.
distracting yourself so much that it's just not part of your life. Unfortunately, those days are kind of few and far between, but yeah, just a lot of distractions.
Do you intentionally distract yourself? Is that something you found effective?
I don't know how effective it is, but yes. Yeah.
What's your top distraction that works the best, if you can share?
I mean, I think a lot of I think a lot of people mentioned it too, like it's kind of joys in life, like going for a walk, spending time with your family, maybe working, taking an extra 30 minutes to maybe work, or an extra 30 minutes to do something that you like, reading a book, and just spending time together. So I know that not a great answer, but just, yeah,
No,
all of
great
that stuff.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not as entertaining of an answer, but a great answer. Yes, thank you. Yes, ma'am, we have some online.
All right. So a good day. We don't think about HD at all. We aren't thinking about the future and being fixated on it. A bad day, we are wondering if something that happened is due to HD or not. When I think about what my life is going to look like in 10 years, when his symptoms are statistically likely to begin, when I worry about his future, basically, is a bad day.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, right here in the front.
Hi, my name is April. Symptomatic, I think it varies day by day on my symptoms. Some say early, some can say mid, later. It depends. Every person is different, but we all have HD. I was a trauma ER nurse that saw my career slip away, lived for my career, all taken away. My good days are far and few between. Depression takes over, but the good days, I'm like a ball of sunshine. Bad days, I can't remember. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to go to the grocery store. Rather eat a bag of chips than to have to go see people at the store. I'd like for the FDA members to introduce themselves and if they can.
Gotcha.
And our statements and what we have to say today is important.
Yeah.
Is important. So any of those, enjoy our good days and let today be the opportunity to express and have a good day that we're here.
Thank you. Thank you. So just an open invitation, if we do have FDA colleagues in the room, I know a lot are online. Hold on one second. We've got one right here who wants to speak up, but I was just going to say, if you are here and you want to find April during a break, she wants to meet people. So go ahead. And can we get a mic here? She wants to speak on behalf of. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Campbell. I'm the Associate Director for Stakeholder Engagement and Clinical Outcomes in the Office of Neuroscience. So Teresa is my boss. We are here today. My colleague Ethan from the Patient-Focused Drug Development staff who helped coordinate this meeting is here as well. And we do have numerous, there's my friend Karen Jackler over there from CBER, so our Center for Biologics. So we also have numerous people online who I have been communicating with this morning from both centers, from at least the medical, from CBER and CEDAR. And I'm pretty sure my CDRH colleagues, they like to join in as well. So we are having some conversations behind the scene, which you guys don't see. We are taking notes and we are listening. I am going to have to sneak out in a couple of minutes. I have, unfortunately, a critical meeting that I must take. You guys are just as important. You've got Karen, you got Ethan here, and you got a whole host of folks listening to you. Trust me, the conversation is ongoing. We are learning a lot. I've heard some really interesting things. It's making me think about how we may approach advice to give to drug sponsors when they come in, things to focus on. So you've already got me thinking ahead for you guys and how I'm already incorporating this advice. So we are here for you. Teresa will be here as well. I see my other friend from CBER in the back as well, Gumili, who's in the Office of Therapeutics, which is where gene therapies and cell-based therapies are. So you do have a lot of interest here today, and we are here to listen to you. And I will be continuing to take notes all day long. So thank you.
Thank you. Last one, and then we'll move on. But I just want to say this is hopefully helping this be an example of a good day, having this conversation and having people here. And thank you for holding all our stakeholders accountable for listening. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Bree, pre-symptomatic. And just building on the idea of like a good day at this point is just ignoring completely what is down the line. And because often the challenge is balancing like, well, do I lean into work and planning for the future? And what does the future even look like? It could be option A, B, C, D, E. And like a bad day is I spiral into the, what does that look like? I have found myself making more checklists because if I don't put it on paper, I'm going to spiral thinking about it over and over and over again. I don't want to forget this. I don't want to forget this. I if I don't have it written down somewhere, I know I'm going to forget it. And I find myself doing that more often. And then I go down the rabbit hole of, oh, well, is this just because I'm in my 30s and getting older? Is this because I'm a parent who hasn't had a full night of sleep in a while? Or is this HD? And so, those are the bad days of where I spiral, and I check in with my partner to go, is this a normal thing? Or do you do this? But a good day is when I just look around and I'm grateful for my current health and the life that we've built together.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
But
I do want to remind everybody there are a lot of comments. Sorry, we have the QR code, and please add whatever is coming to your mind that you're not able to get out so that we can get to all the conversations. Yes, 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
I just wanted to add something
Phyllis, I'll
quickly.
hold you to it.
I just wanted to add something quickly. It's something that's helped me a lot too, and I don't know if it'll work for other people, but mindfulness and meditation. Giving yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day to just sit there with a meditation and think about the day, center yourself on that present day.
Thank you for that. And it's a great transition because I was going to suggest there are several specific tools that you guys have brought up. Please put those in your comments because it's not just the FDA that can see this voice of the patient report. Researchers can see it and sponsor companies can see it. So those could translate easily into tools that people can provide clinical study participants or patients as a whole. So please keep that in mind that several stakeholders are seeing your input and put as specific and actionable information as you can there. Moving on to the question that I thought we were at, I'm going to ask, so how has your condition changed over time? This is still in the pre-symptomatic phase though, okay? So we're still looking at that window, but obviously you've shared it has changed over time. Anyone that can speak to that evolution?
Come on, guys, we get them here for this long day. Let's tell them.
No, you're good. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Let's get you a mic so everybody online can hear too.
Yeah. The problem again is right now focusing on the pre-symptomatic and it's changed.
Yes.
Obviously it's a very subtle change.
Yep.
But I can't speak to that because we're not at early HD yet.
Yep.
So I can speak to the fact that, prior to my prodromal cognitive symptoms, I didn't suffer from executive dysfunction. I had testing done, baseline neuropsych testing done that showed I don't have ADHD. I don't have any other deficits, back when I was 29 and 10 years later, that's not the case. So with updated testing. That's how it's changed.
And if it helps anyone else, this is not just clinical evolution of the disease. Right? How is your day-to-day living with HD? Has there been a noticeable change within that window still of pre-symptomatic? It sounds like we have something online. No? Okay, over here.
Hello again.
Hi.
So when I was diagnosed, and my family, it was all a very negative downward spiral. This was in 2018. And at the time I was also diagnosed with lupus, so I didn't have the mental capacity to handle it. But what I've done was, which we'll talk about later, is a lot of like health upgrades to my diet and my wellness. We'll just say health wellness in general. And my symptoms have actually, some have gotten better, whereas I'm in a meditative state, almost like you said, to where I can actually focus in more on some of the other, like the cognitive stuff. So something where I used to think me and my husband were great communicators, and watching how people stop their communication in the future, we started over communicating. That has helped me with my fixation. That has helped me kind of calm down. I used to get really panicky traveling. Now I'm like all zen going through the airport. So like I've seen some of those symptoms positively change because I've had a more positive outlook. A huge chunk has been going to the HDSA support groups, even though sometimes they're really far away. We have them close now, which is great. The convention was fantastic. Watching people in those mid to late stages still being positive and happy and active as much as possible, it helps me not worry about stuff like that. So that's what's helped me.
Yeah. Got some great role models in this community for sure. Did we have something online you wanted to share?
So there's some common factors that people are bringing up about as time goes on, as people get older, they're wondering if maybe their ADHD is actually HD, or if their anxiety is actually onset of symptoms, some difficulty at work, or worrying about family planning, or even how the impact is on their kids of their anxiety, thinking about HD and how that's playing a role in it.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very strong theme within pre-symptomatic is this questioning, is it, isn't it? Sounds like a strong undercone. Is that accurate? Is this HD? Isn't this HD is a big challenge for pre-symptomatic because it's not fully blown yet. Yeah. I want to take a pause and just thank also people that are in early stage and in mid stage. I know it's you're wanting to get to your conversations too, and just giving the grace and giving the space and giving the honor to people who aren't at your stage, and acknowledging every stage deserves that space to explore and discuss and get support and give perspective. So thank you all for following along with this map. It gives a little bit more clarity to our stakeholders to see the progression. So thank you for that. Our last question for this section, actually, do we consider it well managed? I was gonna skip this question because of some of the prior feedback of we don't really know what it is and to say if it's well managed. Raise your hand if you're in pre-symptomatic and you say, yes, this is well managed. You feel like your condition is well managed. Yeah. Raise your hand if you feel like it is not well managed in pre-symptomatic. So about equal. I don't really totally know. Would you like to add some color to that of what you think is not well managed? Yes.
Yeah, I think based on what a lot of people have said is there's a lot of uncertainty in this stage.
Right.
I think there's a very long period of this stage. So I think, the first time I went to my HD doctor and said, hey, okay, first time I went, they're like, hey, come back in 5 years. You're so young. I got tested really young. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty at this stage that people need more guidance, action, and information and I think that would help the depression, the anxiety, the uncertainty. So I think a lot of the focus, because my dad also had HD, I've been through all of the stages, but I think this is where some more support would be helpful for the community, whether that's more drugs at this stage or just more advice, guidance, things like that. So, I think not to say it's bad, but I do think what I feel like is that there's more support that could be provided.
It's very actionable. Thank you. Now for our last question, please, the comments that we're not getting to, please make sure you're putting them into the QR code to the platform that's at the QR code because it's really important. This last question of what worries you most about your condition? This is kind of a all-inclusive. What worries you most in the pre-symptomatic phase? Again, if you're a family member, you're also welcome to comment. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, well, I'll just simply say not knowing where we are in that process. And I know that there are some biomarkers that could help identify them that that at this point they're not used in clinical because they don't think there's no change in what they would do for that, but there's a big change in what I would do for that. So you may not think that you're not going to give me maybe a new medicine, but I'm going to change the way I spend my money if I know that I'm further in than I think I am, but I'm just handling it well. And I'll use my sister as a perfect example. She's mid-stage, but she'd go to Alaska tomorrow if she thought she only had 5 more years.
Right. Thank you for that. I think we have the gentleman behind you as well. Yeah.
My name's Robert, and I've actually tested with a 37, so I'm in that reduced penetrance range. And so for me, I'm kind of like, I like to know things. And so one of the reasons why I tested is like, I wanted to know if I have it or not. Well, what's going to happen? I'm still up in the air, right?
Yeah.
And so I never really feel like I fit into any of these categories because nobody cares if you're below 40. But nobody cares if you're, in that little range where you may or you may not. My mom's got it, same as me, and she's, mid-stage right now. But I'm still like, what's going to happen? Am I going to get it? Am I not? What's all that going to happen? But, so a lot of times, like, when I try to figure out what I'm going to do, like, am I going to be able to have a career for 20 years, or do I need to worry about 10 years from now? Am I going to have to worry about saving retirement and all that kind of stuff, or do I need to spend it all, live it up, and all that kind of stuff? Like, so I'm still always in that unknown kind of area, but also not ever really included in a lot of these kind of stuff. So there's no studies or anything. Anytime somebody sends me one, I'm like, well, I can't do it because I'm not above 40 or not below or whatever it is. And I don't know how many of us are like that out there, but that's kind of where a lot of my issues come from this.
Yeah, I'd love to just dig one layer deeper. You said they don't care as long as I don't fit into one of those categories. You mentioned as an example, clinical trials not being an option for you. Are there other examples of them not caring? Who are the they, and what evidence, what experiences are you having that tell you you're not cared about because you don't fit in?
And I shouldn't say I'm not like cared about. I know like everybody around cares for whatever, but like even doing panels or any of that other kind of stuff, it's like I don't really fit any, a lot of them because I'm not at
Not yet
that
there.
pre-symptomatic or whatever you want to call it. I'm not at whatever that target range is. And so it just kind of falls to the wayside, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks. We have some online contribution. Thanks.
So a lot of things people are saying that they worry about. Most is family planning, financially planning. They're worried about cognitive decline. A lot of care management for pre-symptomatic because they're not showing symptoms. So they're not able to go and get treated for some symptoms that they might be experiencing, or even having that initial baseline of testing at HDSA centers of excellence or any kind of clinics, because they're not necessarily showing those symptoms. So they feel not as supported in that sense. I think another key piece is that time feels like it's taken away because they continuously are worrying about things about the future, and time is obviously very sensitive in this.
Yeah. Do we have other alignment with feeling of frustration that you're not getting access to tests or baseline data, that kind of thing in this space? So it's frustrating for you? Okay. Seems to be consistent. You had somebody?
Two.
We've got 2 minutes.
No problem.
My name is Jill. I actually am early to mid stage, but I think the biggest problem that I found when I was pre-symptomatic was you walk into a neurologist's office and they don't see symptoms. And I think that for a very long time, you're talking to people who already know what the symptoms are, so they think they know they have it, but there's no treatment, there's no conversation, I don't see it. If you don't get a genetic test, you need to come back in 5 years or 10 years. And I think the biggest problem with that is I have a 27-year-old who tested positive for a gene, but there aren't very many young people who are going to go out and get tested now. And I think we're missing a great big group of people who are going to be the people who are going to be in our future trials.
Interesting.
So I think we need to find a better way to reach and educate younger people, because we're all willing to do everything because we have it, but we don't know what causes certain things. We don't know how to see it when it starts. So I just think that young people just need to be reached out to more in our community.
It's a great suggestion. Raise your hand if you know young people that are not going to get tested. Like, is that a trend that we're seeing? Okay, that's huge. We're going to go over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shelby. I got tested for HD in July. My CAG is 45. I'm 29 years old. And my biggest worry about my condition is why can't I join a medical trial? Every day I pray to God that, me being pre-symptomatic, they'll let me join a medical trial. But so many times I've heard, you can't do it yet. You have to wait till you have symptoms.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart because my husband and I are more than willing to join a medical trial, like you guys said, do anything. Like she said, there are so many young people out there who aren't getting tested, but there are a lot who are. And I didn't get tested to sit around and do nothing about it. I got tested to actively get into a trial right away. And I pray to God every day that that will happen.
Okay, thank you so much.
Last one.
Can you keep it short for me? Go for it, and then we'll move to early.
So I'm Tanita, and I wanted to piggyback off of the fact that, the way I learned about HD was I'm the first person in my family to be diagnosed, and my number is a 39. And there are problems with people being the reduced penetrance. We make up 5% of the HD population, and that's not really mentioned or even addressed. A lot of people don't realize it, but people in that range from 36 to 39, they can be symptomatic. And I am very much in that category of being symptomatic. So we have people in my family that are both tested, and they are, one is reduced, and the others are full penetrance. But I fall in that gray area, and a lot of doctors don't address that, and a lot of people don't address that.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep saying it. I know there's so many burning comments. Please put them on the platform. The QR code is there. The platform is open currently, so you don't even have to lose your train of thought. Go do it on your phone if you want to, or please write them down. It's really important. But so is getting to all the conversations. So we're going to shift into our early stage Huntington's disease conversation. This again is for anyone currently experiencing early stage, family of people experiencing early stage, or patients and family who have comments remembering when. So we're keeping it at the early stage focus, okay? Also, remember that the treatment conversation is this afternoon. So we're still on the topic of health effects and the impact of living with HD on your life. The questions will feel familiar because we just went through them. So we'll get back to our question number 1. Of all the symptoms you've experienced, which 1 to 3 have the most significant impact on your life? There are some examples here, but that is certainly not what you need to limit it to. We've already got a hand raised over here. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I would have to say that some of the biggest things is getting through the day without anxiety, having to put extra things on with working. I also tend to, when my husband looks at me and says, "You've been dropping a lot of things lately," so I do a lot of that, and that gets frustrating, or even the knocking the glass over at the restaurant. So those are a lot of the things I deal with, but I'm still working on that. But like I said, the anxiety is a big thing.
Great, thank you. And at the front, yes.
I'm here speaking on behalf of my husband. For him, the biggest challenge in his early stage was the behavioral, the anxiety, but then also the not being able to manage the anxiety, just emotional outbursts at work, at home, dangerous emotional outbursts that threatened me, threatened our children. And then you have that fear of, I don't want to call the police, even though I need to for my safety and his safety, because they need to address him as a man with a disease or a mental health issue.
Right.
And you have that fear. So that was definitely the worst thing, is how to deal with the behavioral, the psychiatric issues at those early stages.
That's a great point. Has anyone else faced that, where you're looking at other systems, not the healthcare system, but other systems like law or education or profession, where you're finding those systems just don't know how to handle it? Is that a hand? Yeah. Okay, that's an impact. Right here.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me okay? So I'd like to share a little bit about my nephew. He's just 29 years old. He's been having symptoms
Thank you.
since
Yep.
about his early 20s. So he's very young. So his most significant symptoms include irregular sleep patterns, perseveration, and a mix of depression and apathy. So his irregular sleep patterns prevent him from planning activities, but it also means that when he plans them, they often get canceled. His perseveration nearly kept him from taking medication. He was worried about toxicity and cross-contamination. So the thing that he really needed was an issue for him. His perseverative thoughts also make it difficult for him to focus on anything other than what's on his mind. It makes it difficult for him to do just about anything. And then the combination of depression and apathy they are often debilitating for him. Altogether, these symptoms prevent him from having a job, from maintaining friendships, from living independently and leading a normal life. It's all across the board. And they also have a significant impact on the rest of his family, on his parents, on his siblings, on his aunt. We really worry about him. And we worry about any of the kids in the family who also still face a future with this disease. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for preparing and sharing. We have some comments online. I want to make sure we get to them as well. Yes, ma'am.
Hello again.
Hey.
All right. So some of the common ones that are coming up are difficulty concentrating. A big one is symptoms associated with depression, anxiety, a lot of the psychiatric symptoms that are most challenging, especially in these early stages, not knowing whether or not it's HD and having care and management of care for those symptoms as well, and not knowing if it's that. So a lot of worry around that as well.
Great, thank you. I'm going to jump to this side of the room so we're getting some voices around the area. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I wanted to touch on two. One that affected my family most. Can you hear?
Can you turn the mic up just slightly for us? Thank you. And if you could speak a little louder.
Okay.
Well, good.
I just didn't want to yell.
You're
I
good.
can't
Thank
actually
you.
talk really loud. So I wanted to touch on two. The one that affected my family the most was in my immediate family, were my uncontrolled anger outbursts, which was, I've always had a temper, but it got to the point where, like was mentioned, it was really difficult for my family to handle those tensions in the house, throwing things and making threats or whatever. Sometimes they were for valid things, and sometimes they were for very minor things. But the level to which I ramped up was not okay. The second would be with my work. I have a very technical background, and my cognitive decline has been difficult for me to kind of help maintain my role at my
Yeah.
office.
Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing. We'll go here for the last one, the gentleman that's been waiting for us. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Wayne. I like to stand up when I talk. I apologize.
Awesome. We welcome it.
I'm speaking on behalf of my wife. My wife, Judy, was a professional musician, like some of you in this room I've heard. When she started showing symptoms, when you're at the professional level of any profession, even a smallest decline in your abilities means you lose everything. The definition of her professional career was gone. It is gone to this day. You start noticing symptoms, little trends that are going on, concentration, and so forth. But the skill level it takes to perform, and she's on like 8 Grammy records, and she's performed around the world. So that's all gone, been taken away from her. And you start noticing. Now, this is before she was even tested. So we knew she had it in her family. She had her father. And I think when we have this discussion about pre and early stage, it's really hard to remember the stuff that was going on pre-stage, because in our case, we didn't even think about it. We watched her father. We thought, hey, you know what? We're going to dodge this bullet. Maybe we don't have to worry about it. And then the shit happens. You start the little things here and there once in a while. But when you're at the professional level, like the young lady who was a doctor in the emergency room, or other musicians here, it is devastating to the psychology and the personality when you lose everything that you've worked for. Now we have our family and a loving family, but once your professional career is just gone.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you. If we look at the survey results to this question, it mirrors again what you all are saying. Difficulty concentrating being extremely high, anxiety being right there, memory lapses, and depression. So very strong numbers in very similar ranges to what you were expressing. Our next question for early stages, and thank you to everybody who's taking care of yourself during the time. You're welcome to take a break and come back if you need to. The second question, are there specific activities that are important to you, but you cannot do at all or as fully as you would like because of your condition? Some of the examples that we've discussed: sports, family, intimacy, daily hygiene, but it could be any number of things.
Again, early phase. We've got the gentleman in the blue shirt. We'll come to you, Denise.
So I'm gonna speak on my family for any of these discussions, but and I don't know where this really fits, but I had an uncle who started showing symptoms and then went and committed suicide within a couple of months because he knew what was coming on, what was going to happen. He had a young daughter, wife at home, and he didn't want them to have to deal with any of these issues or the financial burdens or any of the caretaking burdens. And so he didn't even get a chance to get to any of these other stuff just because as soon as he got it, he was gone and I don't want to do this anymore. And so I just wanted to bring that quick perspective in through on this discussion that it doesn't always make it past
Doesn't
that.
make it that far. Important perspective. Thank you. Denise, you wanted to add something if right here. Yeah.
I was one of the panelists. And I'm Denise. We have a granddaughter, and while we were so excited waiting for her to come, this is when I started having my balance issues. I felt like I'm afraid to hold her without sitting down. And I'm only 57. I'm not supposed to have this problem, but that is the most thing that that bothers me the most about this stage.
Yeah, the activity you can't do. Yeah,
Right. Right.
completely. We have one over here. Yeah, she's coming. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Speaking as a family member for my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, so I guess that was her career and that was her identity. And so we were always very close, and of course that relationship has changed. And so I'm putting her in the early stage, but I think she's heading toward that mid. So by definition that I saw earlier, we'll go with early. But I think like the biggest indicator for me that things were really, really, really different now, that like she struggles now at this point with incontinence, and that she barely leaves the house. I can get her out maybe to go shopping for a short trip, but I live about 2 hours away from her, and she decided not to travel for my baby shower, which is one of those events that I know she would have wanted to be there for, hell or high water and any other conditions. But that was like the final like nail in the things are different now for her.
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
So before I start with mine, I do want to clarify too, like historically, when we say early stage, it was before movements, right? And now as we learn more about HD, obviously focusing earlier and early stage includes the cognitive symptoms and behavioral symptoms. And before that was really looked at pre-symptomatic. We did not focus on that. But I wanted to share a post I actually wrote about this because it affected me so much. I'm a longtime patient advocacy for several years with several organizations, and I do a podcast for the community, and things have definitely changed. So I was at the Help for HD symposium this year, and I normally love being at these events, watching everyone dance and laugh, love the music and the vibe, but this year I found that I couldn't stay in the main room because of the combination of the lights, the volume of the music, the number of people, so much louder to me this time, to the point it hurt my head and made me start panicking and feeling sick and irritable. This is something that is not just related to being at symposium. This is something I experience every day, even going into a grocery store, which is what's changed. Where I could do it before, it's very difficult to do now.
Thank you for that. I also just want to acknowledge seeing the support around the room that you're potentially not seeing. So just thank you for those of you that are supporting each other, even when you're not speaking. It's beautiful right now. Yes, ma'am. It'll be our last one for this question.
So I haven't heard others say this, but so I'm speaking on behalf of my nieces, and it's I'll call it a lack of empathy or awareness of their behavior, and there's this stage where they become very self-focused and really have no appreciation for what goes into helping them or anything besides what it is they want when they want it immediately. and lack of cognitive ability. So they might even think that with their paranoia that you're taking advantage of them or you're doing something different. So, I have a niece that I've taken care of since she was a child because her mother died, who thinks I'm stealing her money. And I've given her money for years and years and years. And so that whole family dynamic and the lack of empathy and interest on that person to even really participate with us, we're now outcasts for at least that one.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you. Did we have anything online for this question before I move on? Okay.
There was a lot of things like concentrating at work becoming more difficult in these earlier stages, and then also having mood swings with family members becomes difficult, and even just like daily household chores or things that they enjoy, like playing instruments or drawing or hiking, going outdoors, being social, spending time with family and friends, not wanting to be in those social atmospheres.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was a nice segue building on the last comments. Let's check and see what the survey reflected as well. We've got the 4 activities here. Worries about the future is an impact. Unable to do work I've done in the past. We've talked about work a lot. No longer engage in social activities I enjoy. We just touched on that as well. And financial instability. So the financial instability I haven't heard come up yet in the room. Raise your hand. Is that something that resonates strongly at this stage as well? Yeah? Okay. Great. Yeah, work and financial go together. Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next question. Again, in the early stage HD conversation. What does a good day look like? What does a bad day look like? From the side comments in our pre-symptomatic phase, I feel like some people have some strong answers for this question now. Yes, ma'am. Hold on one second. We're getting the mic for you.
Okay. Well, my name is Tanita, and on a good day, I would say that I am able to carry out all of my activities that I planned from the day before, because I've noticed that I have less anxiety when I write things down and record like what I plan to do. I have to have a plan in order for me to feel like I can function. That's what happens with me as far as my anxiety. A bad day could be something like, a really bad day for me. I'm going to give an example. In 2023, I had a bad fall, and I was knocked unconscious, and really bruised myself really bad. But I had a fall, and I was out for a period of time that I don't know. But that's a bad day, like having a really bad fall or falling down steps, falling up steps. I can remember all those times, falling in the shower, out of the shower, just on the street, falling on the street and being afraid that I was, and being scared because people would look at me and say, "Are you drunk? Are you high? Are you, I would be treated as a person who was mentally ill." So, that fear of being judged and treated by law enforcement or by strangers off the street is definitely was something that I've had to deal with on a bad day. So
Yeah. We're hearing that come up a couple of times now, right? This education needed for law enforcement or that type of scenario. Yeah, for what to recognize. The lady beside, yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'd like to share again about my nephew. So I would say that the symptoms I've talked about earlier, so sleep patterns, perseveration, and then apathy and depression, they are very isolating for him. It is very rare for him to have a good day. Many days he's in his room the entire day, or just trying to focus on getting something to eat. It's hard to take a shower. It's hard to do any of these things. So his bad days are isolated in his room, or if he happens to get out and he has a little money. One topic we haven't talked about yet is substance abuse. He will spend his money on alcohol or weed to kind of fill that void. His good day would be doing something with his family, going on a trip, and on a very rare occasion, seeing his friends. It's very rare, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing up and spotting the gap in the conversation. Appreciate that. Just one moment. Are we back online? I just wanted to check we're good there. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
For my husband, a good day would be when kind of the anxiety and the behavioral issues are kind of being maintained. They're managing well that day, and he gets to do some social activities, typically with friends or family who kind of understand and can kind of support him, and it doesn't make it stressful because it's around familiar settings. That's a good day when he gets to experience some of the things he used to do. A bad day would be when, you know, the behavioral issues are unchecked, or also just the worrying about the future. He worries about his children. He worries about us. You know, he would perseverate a lot on the fact that he's never going to be able to get life insurance. You know, once you have that diagnosis, once you have that test, you're screwed. And that's a huge thing because, I mean, like the gentleman said earlier today, this hits families generationally. You know, the breadwinner, the money earners for the families, it hits generation after generation, and then there's no way to prepare for the future. And that's when he thinks about those are his bad days.
Well, thank you for, again, another gap in the conversation. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Welcome to the conversation.
Yes, this is about my husband who is currently mid to late stage, but I'm remembering a time early on. A bad day for him was he was still working, he was still driving. He had a flat tire and didn't know exactly what to do. I mean, he could call AAA, he could, you know, he was just stymied. He was unable to figure it out for himself. Eventually he did, but that was, it completely ruined his day.
Yeah.
A good day would have been, you know, he mentioned to me, I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Let's just do
Yeah.
something.
Love that. That's a good t-shirt. Let's just do. I love it. We do have some online comments, it looks like.
All right. So a good day being having no fatigue, no emotional outbursts, productive at work, having genuine joy just being around friends and family, keeping up a good sense of humor, being able to travel. A bad day can look like falling asleep while driving, not being able to focus, being short-tempered, severe anger outbursts, and excessive crying that I can't control.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the online participants for hanging in there and staying active with us. We really appreciate it. And as you can see, you're being part of the conversation. We really appreciate it. We do need to move on to the next one. I know that the ladies with their hand raised are going to be ones that will go to the platform and put the comments in. I trust it confidently. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We're moving to our next question. You can see it on the screen as usual. How has your condition and its symptoms changed over time? We're still in the early stages, and you can tag on to this, that second layer question if it sparks for you. What do you, would you define your condition today as being well managed? So how has it changed over time, and do you consider it well managed? Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Rich. I'm in the early stages. How's it changed over time? When I was pre-symptomatic, you don't know when you're changing, I think. I'm fortunate enough to have late stage onset, so I was in my 50s when I was diagnosed. But now when you look back and you start seeing that you don't perform at work as well as you used to, and you don't do this as well as you're not as sociable as you used to be, and things like that. So that has changed for me. I own my own law firm for 28 years. I could multitask. I could do everything. I could make 5 decisions walking down the hallway. Now I can't make one. I'm still a little tiny bit working. I closed my office and merged with a larger firm. back around age 60 because I knew what was going to happen. I just couldn't manage that firm anymore.
Yeah.
And then I had to leave. I was asked to leave there. So I just kind of semi-retired at 62 and just worked from home. Fortunately, my wife's a professional, and we're financially we're okay. But now to sit down, I used to write 30, 40-page briefs.
Right.
It was easy for me. Now to write a letter is very difficult. It's traumatic sometimes just to get your thoughts together. And also how things have changed. The gentleman over there that said he was at 37, I'm at 39, same thing. At the early stage, I think we feel, I guess, I think kind of abandoned from the community, is that you didn't want to go to, I go to an HD center, I see the psychiatrist, see the neurologist. They had those discussion groups or whatever in the community, but I told them I didn't feel right going there because I thought I was healthy. Maybe I won't ever have an onset. So why should I take up somebody else's time?
Right.
And I think that was wrong. That was a big mistake. And I think the HD community can do a better job of try to maybe facilitate or get those people more involved. I signed, somebody else asked about, being studies. I've signed up for many studies. I was never asked to participate in one now. I can't participate in because I'm too old.
Right.
So, that's part of it. But yeah, everything has gotten more difficult. You wonder, well, am I knocking over glasses because I'm 68 years old and just a klutz, or I can't remember things because I'm 68 years old. But
Yeah.
all my colleagues that are professionals, they don't knock the stuff over. They can, judges still can remember things. We can't. So that's,
Yeah.
it's extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to second what he's saying? We've got a lot.
39 years old and,
Okay.
got terminated from my position because I could no longer, and I was dealing with 11 case managers in a patent and invention office, no problems, and could not do it anymore. So I just second what you say and thank you.
We've got, can we grab a mic up here? Did we have somebody over here? I saw somebody pointing. No?
One thing that I noticed that changed for me over time is that my approach to my social connections it's changed quite a bit. Dating is a big problem. When people find out that I have HD, they Google it or, and then they run for the hills. So I get rejected over and over. And before I knew I had, even had this in my family, I had no problems with going on dates or whatever. I was like any normal person, but now it's a problem because people ask a lot of questions. Why do you take medicine? How come you can't drink? Why aren't you drinking you can't have a drink with me? Or, why can't you engage in activities that are quote normal? No.
And what would you say is the change over time related
change-
to that? Was that just something you didn't have to think about before?
The change over time is my approach to having dating and having intimate relationships, having any kind of relationships. I have to think about that.
Okay.
And really measure who I deal with and how I deal with them, because people can be very it can be very hard if you're not already in a relationship. I've noticed that a lot of people in this room have partners in there, and that's wonderful. But I didn't have anybody, and I still don't. So.
No, that's great. Thank you. I mean, that's not great, but it's a great insight to offer. Yes, we have a comment over here.
Yeah, so
Can you hear me? No?
Let's switch it out. Yeah, thank you. That one's
Okay,
live.
can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is my perspective on behalf of my father, who passed away less than 2 months ago of Huntington's disease. So this is the phase where I saw him turn from a fully independent man who also did not have a partner into fully self-sufficient on his children by the end of the early stage. I think where I saw him go is from, this is where I really saw the cognitive decline. I think there were some physical symptoms, but this is where he was making very bad financial decisions, messing up his taxes, was not able to handle, being a landlord, paying his own bills.
Right.
So I think this is where a lot of family support is needed to oversee. And then, like people were saying, hey, there's some paranoia in that. But I think just to me, this is where I saw the complete loss of independence and really reliance on people. And there's a huge gap if people don't have that support system as well. So I just wanted to share that from a child perspective.
Okay, thank you. Do we have somebody we haven't heard from yet with a hand raised? I want to prioritize that. Okay, we have the last comment over here. For everyone, please continue to put your responses into the platform.
Just speaking on the paranoia level, so my father has it and he was fully functioning, and the biggest kind of turn of events was he developed really bad paranoia. I look very similar to my aunt too, where he would just kind of, I walked in the house one day and he had a shotgun. Like he didn't know who I was, what I was doing there. And then, with law enforcement, they don't, Huntington patients don't like to be touched. So doing that was very reactive. Also, so it's not only the police force, but nurses also. My aunt just passed on Saturday from it, and the hospice nurses had no idea what this disease was.
Right.
So,
Thank you so much for sharing, and sorry for your recent losses. Several people have mentioned that. Just wanted you to flag how we're all together with you honoring those people that you've just lost and honoring you in your grief. So thank you for being here and sharing with us. We are going to move to our last question in the early stage discussion. What worries you most about your condition? And I do encourage anyone who hasn't spoken, get the courage bug to speak up. We've got one right here. Yeah. Thank you. You've got this. We're all here for you.
I wrote something, so I'm going to stay on script.
Okay.
My name is Christina DeGrice, and my family has been battling Huntington's for generations. I stand before you because you're my only hope. As a young girl, I watched my grandmother wither away, the way my father and my aunt are slowly dying before my eyes. I want to live to enjoy my children and my future grandchildren. I've gone through my entire life believing there would never be a chance to beat this disease. After attending the 2024 Huntington Study Group Conference, I've finally been given hope from the scientists. All I need from you is to keep the door open for these groundbreaking trials to continue. What worries us most about my father's condition is the rapid progression of HD and the fear that he will experience the same devastating decline we've seen in our family. We've already witnessed my father's sister in the middle stages, and we cared for my grandmother during her final years when she became completely dependent on us, bedridden, and reliant on a feeding tube. We've been living with Huntington's for over a century, and if there's a way to stop it before it takes full hold, We want to see it fast-tracked for the FDA approval. If you take anything away from the people, from what people are saying today, it's that there is real hope for curing this disease, and everything should be done to support these trials. It would be a shame to let our suffering be in silence. I'm asking you, please, the future of my family and many others is in your hands. Being here today is a horrible reminder that we are not alone. We need full support to cure this disease. Thank you.
Thank you.
You belong at a mic. It's a powerful story, powerful voice. Thank you for sharing that clear message. We had someone over here. Did you have something pressing? Yeah? Or did I?
I mean, that covered most of it. I just wanted to talk in perspective. My aunts and uncles, who when they were in early stages, my mom's still in early stage, but all of their fears were all triggered down to passing it down.
Okay.
So that I just wanted to add, because that was a huge thing. It took years for my family to all mentally, and I think they're still dealing with it.
Yeah, great point. We will wrap that part up with our online check-in. What's going on there?
So, things that people are most worried about that keep coming up are losing of daily independence, losing the ability to communicate things they want, things they love to people they love, being a burden on their family, talking to their kids about it, and worrying about the impact on them. And a lot of people are talking about, at this point, worrying about that they'll have a sense of giving up at this.
Yeah. It's really showing that critical, pivotal point in your process where we're hearing a strong message of everyone's maintaining hope, and we're also hearing we're worried about giving up. So this is really seems like an inflection point in the journey. Thank you for adding the color and the nuance that we can really see what's going on there. Everyone take a deep breath. That's a lot. Beautiful conversations, beautiful support of each other. It's really special. Please. We're at the mid-stage HD conversation. Same questions. We're still on topic 1, the health effects of living with HD and the impacts on that lived experience. Remember, if you are at a different stage, if you're at a later stage, I know we don't have a later stage discussion, focus on when it was in the mid stage. If you're wanting to talk about treatments, remember that's our next topic, so we'll defer that. Other reminders in the room, the way to participate in the conversation, you raise your hand. My friends with the microphones are gonna come find you and they're gonna help me remember who went next. I'm gonna try to get to people especially who haven't spoken yet. So here's my plug for people who haven't spoken yet. For people who have spoken, we definitely still appreciate your comments. This is not at all saying we're not coming to you. Don't worry about that. And we'll get to online as well being read out. Does that work? Yeah. The QR code, you will get sick of me saying it, and I've done my job well if so. The QR code, the platform is open. If there's anything that you do not get to say out loud that you wanted to say, if there's anything you thought of now that you're like, oh, I wish I had said that, you can add that. Please do add that. Please be as specific and detailed as you can so that people can take action on it. Same with our colleagues, our participants on the online. Make sure you're giving specifics when you want your comments added. But it would be helpful if you go to the platform, again, talking to our colleagues online. If you go to the platform, you can add some context, like I'm referring to mid-stage versus just a comment that shows up in the chat. So there's some advantage there. Okay, let's go. We are back to our set of questions that you are all very familiar with. Of the symptoms you're experiencing living with mid-stage HD, which 1 to 3 symptoms have the most impact on your life?
Who's jumping in after lunch? Heather, great.
Making sure it doesn't shock me.
Don't be scared.
I keep I'm touching people and shocking them. My name is Heather, and one thing I have noticed that no one's talked about are the obsessions. And we've been dealing with the obsessions. Nathan's considered mid-stage, mid-stage, and from the get-go, obsessions. First off, it was we were going to cut the cord, and we weren't going to have electricity. We were going to have a water generator. And Dr. Sung may remember us talking about this. Nathan went out, took the Home Depot card and bought all kinds of things to make a water generator that never got made. So we're still on the cord. But also, like, even now, I was telling Beth earlier, like 2-3 months ago, all we could watch was documentaries on mammoths. Then it became Transformers. Now we're on Harry Potter, all 7, over and over and over. So that's really one of the biggest things, aside from, the slurred speech, the inability to walk, that kind of thing. But it was one I hadn't noticed anyone talking about. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case someone else has been dealing with that kind of thing too, because it's not one that gets talked about a lot. We call them kicks. We don't call them obsessions. Nathan's on a Harry Potter kick right now because we have to do everything with dark humor and positivity. So we put that kind of spin on it.
Yeah. Do we have hands raised? Is obsessions a thing for others? Okay. Yes,
Oh, goodness.
you're not alone. You're not alone. Is there one I'm missing? Online.
So some of the symptoms I think that hasn't been touched on as well is, yes, the loss of social connections, but it's really not necessarily the person with HD's fault, but people maybe feeling uncomfortable or not feeling comfortable to go around or having that peer support as they need it. Difficulty communicating with limited language ability, and that leads to frustration and being impatient.
Great, thank you. In the back?
And looking at the list, the bowel digestive issues really came into focus at mid-stage, and understanding, the science of what is going on and making sure we're getting the fiber, the water, everything in with that really became, because it was an obsession as well. So
It was an obsession to manage it?
because of maybe not having the bowel movement,
Right.
or worrying about.
Gotcha. So the panic around it and all.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So the executive function, just the management, is really degraded at this point for my spouse. We manage that by he has a smartphone, and our daughter knows how to use it really well.
Right.
So there's all these alarms, but it's not just an alarm, but the alarm tells him verbally, it's time to take your pills, or it's time to do this, it's time to eat lunch. Because if it was just the alarm, he knew it was a purpose, but what? And then even like the simple task of preparing the meal, it might be getting it out of the freezer or the fridge, putting it in the microwave, but we'll still kind of just do a lap or a circle or turns. And it's like finishing even a simple 1 to 2 step task is a struggle. So it's really that mental breakdown, but having prompts or reminders that aren't necessarily another person helps with his independence, which is something he feels is very important. He wants to be as independent still.
Makes sense. Yeah. We've got one last one. Go ahead.
This is something that one of my doctors back kind of diagnosed me with having OCD. He said that I had OCD traits, and therefore I needed to be treated for that. I would do things in rituals. Like things have to be ritualistic for me to feel calm. I've noticed that that's a big big thing for me. If I do things in like sequenced, it has to be 1, 2, 3. It can't be 3, 2, 1. Otherwise it makes me nuts. So I have to follow patterns in order to feel better.
Okay. Any patterns? Is that a big tactic for others? Seems like some, not necessarily a blanket. Okay. The survey responses for this question look at stumbling and clumsiness as a leading concern, chorea, which we've talked a lot about, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating as the top symptoms of significance for mid-stage. Okay, moving to our second question. Are there specific activities that are important to you, but you cannot do or can't do as fully as you would like to because of your condition at the mid-stage? Yes, ma'am. A new voice, yay.
Thank you, Jameson. I would say at mid-stage for my father, the specific activity was when we had to take away the keys. That was his official loss of independence because he was a car guy and to not be able to drive. So, and then I've seen that in other members of my family too, what that thing that is the last mode of true independence that's the one for mid-stage for my family.
And it was the driving
For
aspect. I
driving for my
presume.
dad, but just other, what, no, you can't go do that on your own kind of activities with other members of my family.
Right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So my husband enjoys watching television, but these damn remote controls can be frustrating. And I wish one of the product vendors would devise a universal remote control, because even finding the volume is an issue. And that's one thing that he truly, truly enjoys. And if I'm not there, I'll come home and he's watching, with the streaming now, he's watching the same news over and over and over again. So that's a frustration.
And that's because he can't change it, or because he's
Right.
obsessed over the news?
Yeah, no, he can't change it.
Can't change it, but wants to watch. Yes, sir.
I totally agree with the compulsive things and an order that my wife has to do in the morning. It's just weird. She has to wear certain shoes when she washes her hair. It takes her 3 hours to get dressed, not because she can't get dressed. She just can't decide what to wear. But there's funny moments too. And I got to tell you one funny one and I started doing a diary, but I had to stop because most of it was depressing. But my wife's mind goes from this to this to this to this. I was working in my office, and all of a sudden I see my wife walk through the room naked.
Woo.
She was taking a bath. I said, "Well, where are you going?" She says, "I need a toothpick." But this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with. But I'll tell you the one thing, because she can't work anymore, we took a financial hit.
Yeah.
And as a caregiver, my job is taking, a hit.
Yeah.
So finances wise, we haven't really talked about it much today, but for those of you who are in a family and you're a caregiver, the finances you're getting whacked with, the hit is a huge part to, because now we have to think about what's going to happen next, long-term care, whatever it might be. And that's not going to be in our picture anymore because we just can't afford that. So as a caregiver, our whole family is kind of concerned about what the next step is going to be.
Right. It's important.
One of the things at this stage that really hits my nieces hard is being able to keep weight on. They just cannot consume enough calories. They're both 5'7" and 5'9" and almost under 100 pounds, and they just cannot consume enough calories. But they also have an extreme sort of jealousy and fear of missing out. It's not really an anger to the disease, but it's really they don't want anyone else to do fun things too. And so that's been hard. Her favorite thing had always been to go get coffee. And now her chorea is so bad she can't ride in the car. So we bring it to her and she still squeals, but she really misses that going out and the social aspect of driving through to get a Starbucks.
Yeah.
I know it's a oh, now I can't think of it. What is it? A white? What's the blonde? Sorry. Blonde. It is a blonde latte with caramel.
What is it? Do we have online comments? Yeah.
Thank you. So some things to add on to like that remote control comment, using a cell phone, being able to communicate with other people and just even that way. And also not being able to perform certain work activities or just daily life activities that they were once able to do.
Okay. Last one. Yes.
I think the social activities and the isolation from other people. I am a caregiver, and we've lost a network of friends. They're still our friends, but we just don't necessarily get included in some of the activities.
Yeah.
Because we can't. It's hard, it's difficult. And so there's the isolation. And for me, that's huge. The isolation and loneliness of not having that outlet anymore,
Right.
or finding new outlets.
Yeah. And is it because you can't actually, or there's just the perception of we don't know how to integrate?
I think a lot of it is we're not necessarily included because we're not doing certain
The same things.
things. So we're not having a dinner to discuss buying tickets or whatever because we're not going to tailgating or whatever
Yeah.
football game.
Yeah. Okay. So the results from the survey reflect that unable to do work I've done in the past is still your leading answer, like in the room. And it sounds like online is a consistent theme as well. Loss of independence. We've given some really powerful stories there. No longer able to drive, very specifically, and financial instability, specifically. So there you go. Moving to our next question. This is your good day, bad day question. Again, we're in the mid-stage. Good day, bad day. Yes, ma'am. Kick us off. Thank you.
My husband will joke that it's a good day if he doesn't have a urinary accident in the morning. I mean, that really actually starts him off well. But yeah, a good day would be not having any urinary incontinence, responding to all his alarms, and having his day go well, and being able to watch his cooking shows or the things that he's really focused on. Someone mentioned it earlier. He rewatches kind of the same shows, and I think for him, it's enjoyable because he can follow the storylines and stuff. He doesn't get involved in some of the new dramas and stuff he would probably like because he doesn't have the ability to follow along anymore. But he can watch reruns or watch Harry Potter movies. Once a month, we watch all 7 Harry Potter movies.
Oh, y'all could have a party.
But it brings him joy. So those are good days.
Yep.
So let's have those. Bad days are when, he'll be in the garage to get something, or he'll be in the kitchen and he won't remember why he walked in there, or can't remember if he shut put this away, or the refrigerator door is left open, when it just all falls apart.
Right. Okay. Got one here. Yeah, go ahead.
I think at this point in Huntington's, when you're having a good day, it means you can forgive yourself for whatever you're losing, your mind, your anger, your whatever it is. And I think we don't do that enough. And I think at this point in time, all that inward anger starts to go outward. So I think a good day is a day that we just look at ourselves and say, it's okay to not be perfect.
Can we get some support for that, Brad? That's a powerful lesson for everyone. Yes, ma'am.
A good day for me is being able to get through my, things that I have planned, connecting with family, friends. A bad day is feeling like I want to die, being suicidal, having suicidal ideation. That is, obsessing about death, obsessing about, ways to die. That's a bad day.
I'll take your word piggyback. I'll go right off that. A good day can start off good, and by hours, end of the day, I can be thinking for myself, I don't want to live this way. I'm tired. I'm tired of living this way. And how am I going to go out? How am I going to do it? And I don't know if you people have ever lost somebody to suicide. FDA members, have you ever had anybody, any family member suffer from suicide or suicide? Have you? Okay, then it's serious. And so when you have a collective group of people here telling you guys, we are suicidal. We do think about suicide. Our family members think about suicide. Our family members worry about us committing suicide. Those are our days. Those are our days. And I really hope you're hearing us.
Do we have anything else online you want to reflect? Awesome.
One of the things I think that we haven't touched on as well is like sleep disturbances for folks that are experiencing symptoms in this stage. And so a good day starts with a good night's sleep and being able to complete tasks that we start. And then also a bad day is that routine being disrupted or starting off with a bad night's sleep and not particularly being able to move past certain fixations.
Okay, great. We'll move to our next question then. Again, on your screen, how has your condition and its symptoms changed over time? Remembering that we're not looking at clinical symptoms necessarily, or we're not limited to clinical symptoms. Do we have, yeah, can we get a mic up here? Thanks. You can also be thinking about, would you define your condition well managed?
Over time, my condition has it's gone actually in the opposite direction. I had a nightmare of a host of symptoms before. So I had motor problems, cognitive problems, and psychiatric problems, so anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. So I went through all of that. I've been in and out of, spent like a decade in and out of hospitals. And finally, I have what I found to be a good balance is I found a really good team, and they are amazing. And I also incorporate mindfulness and holistic practices along with traditional medicine. And that's what's helped me to even get to this point, because at one point I had a cane, I had a walker, I used to use a shower chair and all those things. And now I don't have to use those things anymore, thanks to physical therapy, thanks to I got my weight under control. I started caring more, just caring about living and taking care of myself. And when I started caring for myself, that's when I noticed that I changed over time. So things have gotten more stabilized for me. Without my medicine, I'm not the same person that you're looking at right now. I'm a shaking mess without my drugs that I take every 12 hours. So, but I am grateful that those things can be suppressed with medication, and I'm hopeful that we can find something to help. And I just want to add this one last part, that a lot of doctors back when I was first diagnosed, they told me that Black people don't get Huntington's disease and that that's not common in, with African Americans. And that's such a lie. That's a myth that I wish they would stop saying. And I wish that doctors would stop teaching that to their colleagues or their future doctors, that Black people or people of in marginalized communities don't get affected by Huntington's disease.
Thank you for that emphasis. I appreciate it. So I'll because I'm sure that some of those comments a lot of people want to build off of, we're going to have our treatment approaches and all of that. So if you have ideas that were sparked by some of the comments of medicine and holistic and all of that, we'll pause and save those for your afternoon discussion. So just flipping back to this to make sure if there's anything still open. Okay, we have a
I was just going to explain a little bit about my brother's change in symptoms. So not
symptom specific, but he tends to go through these periods of severe steep decline. And when those things happen, it's really hard to know what he's going to lose, what he's going to look like when that kind of levels out. And it can be alarming. We don't know how much he's going to change. And then he falls into a pattern of kind of a plateau. And that's the time that we get to enjoy the time with him. But he does go through this cycle of swift decline and plateau.
Gotcha. Thanks. Is it pressing? Go ahead. Last one.
Something that I don't think gets talked often enough about is how differently Huntington's hits every person. For example, 2 years ago, Nathan was walking, talking. Matter of fact, his ability to be understood well was just recently in the past few months to the point of that I have to be a translator. And, some people, it hits very quickly. Other people, it takes a while, and that's the crazy thing about this disease that I think people need to understand is how differently it can hit some people. For example, Nathan's mom had all kinds of mental issues, but Nathan's issues are more physical, and that's the wild thing about this disease is that you just don't know how it's going to hit you until it hits you, and then you've got to take the punches and roll with them.
Yeah. A great transition to this is our last question of the mid-stage. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, apologies. Yes, we did have one more comment we were going to plug in right here. Where's Dave? There you, Dave. You ready?
Hi, my name is Dave, and I'm a caregiver for my wife, who is on a late onset Huntington's patient. She came on with symptoms at age 70. And when I first learned of this and we started learning about the treatments, I focused on the trials. My job every day was to look at trials. I went to 4 different HDSA centers all over the country, trying to find out to plug into one of their trials. And it took me a while to realize it because I guess I'm a little slow, but um, the trials aren't set up for people age 70. They're set up for people under 65 for the most part. So then my focus came on to expanded use. I said, well, maybe that's a solution. I saw my job as trying to find a solution, as everybody here does. And of course, expanded use had doors closed too. And so my last thought was to go to Right to Try. And I've learned, of course, that Right to Try is basically it's a dream. It doesn't exist for Huntington people because of the structure of how it's set up for approvals. There's just so many approvals. The drug companies have pretty much decided not to participate in that. I've been to a couple HSG places, and every drug company I talk to says, oh no, we don't do Right to Try. And expanded use is really difficult. But so my perception of this meeting today was to focus on the FDA as somebody, some institution that wants to hear us. And we've heard anecdotes today about everybody's experiences, but my focus is going to be on my frustration with the process. And the FDA sets up the procedures that are set up to prove all these trials, and they're following a statute that the government gave them. And they're doing their best job, but I'm telling you now, my perception and the perception of many of us is that they're not doing their job. And there's the perception that I have is the empathy isn't there. And it's probably not, I'm sure they're going to say that it isn't, but I'm going to ask them today, and fast tracking of trials is becoming something that we're starting to hear now. And fast tracking for us is probably something that should be on the screen of everybody at the FDA. Try to get these trials moving because everyone knows how long they take. The phases are there. And we know that the pharmaceuticals and the therapy trials, they're all trying to extend these out to satisfy the requirements of FDA. So for that reason, I'd like the FDA to look at those things. But my focus for my wife is management of decline. You can see the decline. My wife is on the screen 2 years ago with me, and I took this photo yesterday. This is her life: 12 hours in a chair, and then 12 hours in bed, and back and forth. I'm hoping that we can slow this down, but my focus, my ask is that these trials start focusing on the decline. The decline is something that is on everybody's mind every day. And I'm not one that's afflicted, but I know it's on her mind. She's lost her ability to talk to me, but I know it's there. So I'm just asking FDA to start trying to speed these things up. Put fast track on your front page of your computer. And if we can advance these trials at all. I've gone through all the Don Quixote windmills of trials for the last 3 years. I've been encouraged by branaplam and some of these others, PTC 518 and prodopidine. Those are all, they're still struggling. And at the HSG convention last week in Cincinnati, there were a number of promising trials, but virtually 90% of them are still in the mouse. They're still in the mice. And we know because they're in the mice, we're years away from getting a human trial on those drugs. So all the encouragement I got at the HSG is I have to caution myself because it's really something well down the road. I don't know how long my wife is going to continue in this. I'm hoping for years. Since she's late onset, she supposedly has a long lifespan. But the work for me and my daughter who gives her care is focused entirely on her, and we hope soon that there will be some trials that are going to at least slow the decline, if not stop it.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for sharing her with us. Deep breath, everybody. Our last question for this discussion. What worries you most about your condition? This is our last question for the mid-stage on topic 1. What worries you most about your condition? Yes.
I'm going to tap into a couple of things. Decline. At mid-stage, things start declining faster. And we know that they're doing some research on that. But yes, it is amazing. Another participant said that just a few years ago, their patient was walking the same thing. What happened in April, this person is different from what this person looks like now. So the symptoms are rapid now, and I worry about what is coming next and how to handle the next steps.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
My husband's biggest concerns are, he worries about what's going to happen when it gets to the point where I can't care for him, when he can't be home. And then the other part, not just the care, but then financially, the financial impact. He worries about what's going to happen to his children and myself. He also kind of he doesn't want to burden us, his family. Yeah. So that is a big concern. And just, not knowing how is he going to afford to cover the cost for the nursing care and what's it going to do to us as a family financially. So that's kind of his biggest stress.
Yeah. Can I follow up? Sorry, if we can do it before we take the mic away from her, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. I've heard you contribute several times, which is awesome, on behalf of your husband. What about on behalf of yourself? Is there anything you want to add?
That's a lot harder to go into.
Yeah.
My biggest worry is our 2 children. I have a daughter who's 26. I have a son who will turn 21. My daughter's aware of her potential, I think she might be at a point where she's willing to get tested. I understand why she hasn't yet, but given the fact that she might be able to help do these trials to prevent the disease going forward or affecting her, great. My biggest concern, though, is my son, who also has, he's on the autism diagnosis spectrum. So I just worry about his future and what could happen to him. And we really need a way to slow this disease down so the people that are positive don't have this onset of symptoms or don't have this debilitating condition. Maybe we can't put it off forever, but maybe it's something that doesn't start affecting you till you're in your 60s or 70s when other health issues affect you anyways. Because I can't imagine how he's never going to be able to understand it, or if it affects him, that's going to be such a challenge.
Thank you for sharing. Oh, yes, thank you. Online.
Some of the things that are coming up are just the constant worry of decline. I think sometimes we see a plateau in symptoms and then all of a sudden that rapid decline, and it's always just waiting, that anticipation, and anxiety around what's next or what am I going to lose next, along with the people that care about our loved ones that are declining. It's grief, right? We're losing pieces of our loved ones constantly, and even within ourselves, for the people that are experiencing it. And then another thing, it's not even just worrying about yourself, but worrying about your family members who are caring for you, or that they might get this disease from me, and grandkids and so on.
Thank you. Appreciate it, everyone online, for continuing to contribute with us.